guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Georgia and I'm a knit and crochet designer, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful fairy tale top. That's what I'm calling it. First things first, I would say that this pattern is more suited towards like advanced beginner / intermediate. It's not hard, and obviously I'll show you all the steps, but it's definitely like one step up from a beginner pattern. If you do prefer to have a PDF version of a pattern and want to download that, then I'll leave the link to that in the description below. All the info that you do need is on this video, but the pattern does include slightly more information, like it's got like a schematic and things like that. And obviously like it's a completely different format, so it just depends what your personal preference is. The yarn that I used for this was Paintbox Yarn's Cotton Aran. It must be a cotton yarn. Aran yarn is also like worsted weight yarn or size 4 yarn, and if you do want to substitute for a different yarn, then any Aran worsted size 4 cotton yarn should be, you know, suitable for this pattern. But if you do have a different yarn, then just make sure you do that all important gauge swatch to make sure that your gauge is the same as my gauge, because otherwise your top will either end out too big or too small, like compared to what you were trying to achieve. Speaking of that all important gauge, I'll leave that on the screen now. Please do a gauge swatch, because if your gauge is wrong and your top turns out the completely wrong size, then I'm not accepting any responsibility for that. I'll also leave all the size and info on the screen for you as well, so it's probably a good idea to just pause it and see which size will be more suited to you. There is actually a note in the pattern that says if you don't want it to be as tight, because it is quite tight fitting, then to size up. If you want it to be like a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more loose, then I would size up, because there is actually negative ease in this top, which means that it's actually like tighter than your body, if that makes sense. Positive ease is when it's like away from your body, no ease is when it's like flush with your body, and negative ease is when it's like actually like tight. And this pattern does have negative ease, so if you don't want that, then size up. For the approximate amount of yarn you'll need, I'll leave that on the screen now as well. And you'll also need a 5mm crochet hook, or the size hook that is needed to keep the gauge. So if you do gauge swatch and it's slightly off, you might need to go up or down a hook size or two. And you'll also need a few other bits and bobs, but I'll go over that when we start the pattern. I don't want to keep you any longer than is necessary, so if you do like the video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps support my channel and pushes my videos out there so that more people can have access to my free tutorials. And also subscribe if you want to stick around and see more tutorials from me. But without any more babbling, let's get crafting. Okay, so this is the yarn that I use, the Paintbox Yarn's Cotton Aran in the colour white. You're also going to need a 5mm crochet hook, or the size needed to obtain the gauge. You will also need a yarn needle, some scissors and some optional stitch markers throughout this pattern. And now we're going to begin, as always, with a slip knot. We're going to do our beginning chain, and I'll leave on the screen how many chains you should do depending on what size you're making. Once you've got your nice long chain, we are going to start with row 1. Now we're going to do a half double crochet in the third chain from the hook. So you've got 1 chain, 2 chains, and then we're going into the third chain, which is that one there. So you yarn over and insert the hook into the chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. And then you're just going to repeat that across the whole chain. So you yarn over, insert the hook into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and repeat that all the way across. So here's what your work will look like after completing row 1, and now we're going to go into row 2. So remember, there was a note at the start of the pattern that the beginning chain 2 counts as your first stitch. So you're going to chain 2 and turn. Now that chain 2 counts as your first stitch. That would be the same stitch, and we're now going into the next stitch. So the chain 2 counts as the first stitch. We're going into the next stitch with a half double crochet. And so that is effectively 2 stitches there on row 2. And then you're going to continue with the half double crochet in each stitch along. And I will just show you what it looks like when you get to the end of row 2 as well, just to make sure that you have the right amount of stitches and that you've gone all the way to the end of the row, because it's a little bit confusing at the end of row 2. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of row 2. I'm just going to do the last few stitches. So at this point I actually have 2 stitches left, but it kind of looks like I only have 1. So I'm going into the second from last stitch, and now I actually still have 1 stitch left. So the stitch left is those first 2 chains that we skipped over when we did our beginning chain. Then we did the half double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook. So the first and second chains, that is sort of the last stitch, if that makes sense. But I'll leave a stitch count on the screen now, and that way you can just check that you've got the right amount of stitches. And if you're 1 short, it's because you still have 1 stitch left to go. Now all we're going to do is repeat row 2. So I've chained 2 and I've turned. I'm going to half double crochet into the next stitch and in every stitch along, obviously keeping the same stitch count, because row 2 doesn't have any increases or decreases, so we're not going to do any increases or decreases. Make sure that stitch count stays the same. You're going to repeat row 2 until you have a total of however many rows it says to do on the screen. Okay, so this is what my work looks like. Obviously, we're all going to have a different amount of rows depending on what size we're doing. And if you do find that a bit confusing, then in the written pattern, it is actually a lot more clear. So for the next row, we are going to chain 2 and turn. So before now, we were going into the next stitch, but this time we're going to go into the same stitch. So we're going to go directly beneath that chain 2, and we're going to do a double crochet. Then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. So you yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And you're going to do 2 double crochets in every stitch along. So you can see for each stitch I'm doing 1 double crochet, and then I'm going into the same stitch with another double crochet. And this is going to create like the frills that we have along the bottom of the top. So in every single stitch across, do 2 double crochets all the way along, and I'll leave a stitch count on the screen for you. Okay, so this is what my work is looking like after that row where we did 2 double crochets in every stitch across. Now for the next row, we are going to chain 2 and turn again. We've got double crochets again this time, but we're just going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch across. So I'm going to double crochet in the next stitch, and then in the next one, and all the way across, and your stitch count should stay the same as the row before. So now your frills should be looking something like this. We are done with the length of the top, and we're now going to start working into the ends of the rows. So you can see I've turned my work around, and we're now going to be working into the short edge of the top. Starting again from row 1, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. Now obviously this is kind of just rough because they're not actually stitches that we're going into really, they're like the edges of the stitches, so just use your best judgment for this part. So I've done 2 single crochets, then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So where you would place your next 2 stitches, we're going to skip over that. So one's there and one is there, and then we're going to go into the 3rd stitch along from where we are right now, so with a single crochet. So we've skipped over 2 stitches, which has left a little hole there, and then we've done a single crochet into the 3rd one. Now we're going to do 2 more single crochet. So I've done 1, and then here is the 2nd one. Then you chain 2, skip over 2, 1, 2, go into the 3rd, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go into there with a single crochet, then do 2 more single crochets. There's 1, there's 2, again you're going to chain 2, skip 2, and go into the 3rd one with a single crochet into the next 2, and I'm sure you've picked up the pattern by now. Chain 2, skip 2, single crochet in the 3rd, then do 2 more single crochets, and keep doing that until you get near the end, and then I'll show you what the end should look like of this row. Okay, so you can see I've done my last chain 2, but it looks like I only have like 1 stitch left. So I have this stitch and this stitch, but obviously I need to skip 2, so then they're the 2 that I'm going to skip, and I'm actually going to single crochet into that stitch where my left thumb is. So it's actually along the top of the top rather than on the side of the top, if that makes sense. So I've done my chain 2, I'm going to skip 1, skip 2, and then single crochet into this stitch here, which is actually on the top edge of the top. And that creates our last little hole. And now for row 2 of this little section, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And then we're just going to single crochet in each stitch along. Now straight away we've got a chain space here, so I'm just going to go straight into the chain space with a single crochet, and then another single crochet into that chain space, because obviously it's a chain 2. That means we have to do 2 single crochets in that chain space. Then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch until I get to the next chain space, and then again we're going to do 2 single crochets just directly into that chain space, single crochet in each stitch along. Again, when you get to the next chain space, you're going to do 2 single crochets in that chain space, and keep doing that until you get all the way to the end of the row. And this is what the edge of your top should be looking like once you're done with that row. Once you've got all the way across, you're just going to cut your yarn and fasten off. Once you've worked your way along that whole row, all you need to do is cut the yarn, and then you're going to reattach your yarn over to the other side. So where the frills are, you're going to just go straight over to the other side, join your yarn and complete the steps again, and then this is what your work should look like once you've done both sides. Once you've done that, we're going to make the tie that goes along the middle of the top. Now, the reason we're doing this now is because you might try on the top and decide you don't want to add sleeves, which would be completely fine. So what you're going to do is make a slip knot, and we're going to do a chain. Also, just quickly, if you do want an easier but less effective way to make this tie, you can get 2 strands of yarn, hold them together and just make the long chain. But in my opinion, this way looks better. So we're going to make the chain of however many it said on the screen. And then once you have the chain, it is going to be quite long, and so this is kind of going to make it shorter, which is why it's important not to do this bit too tight. You're going to slip stitch in the first chain from the hook, and then in every stitch along. So you just insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and then pull through, and that's it. And just make sure you don't do this too tight, because otherwise it will just make the tie too short. Once you've done slip stitches down the whole chain, you're just going to cut the yarn and then weave in those ends, and then all you have to do is just weave the tie through the holes that we made in the short edge of the top, and you can try it on and see what you think. Okay, so now it's time to go onto the straps. You want to start with your top folded the way that I've got mine. Then from the left inner corner, we're going to count in some stitches. So you're going to go right into that inner corner stitch, and you're going to count across. I've got 12, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm then going to place a stitch marker in that 12th stitch. You place a stitch marker if you want to, and obviously make sure you count in the amount of stitches it says for you on your size. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot, and then what we're going to do is attach the yarn to where the stitch marker is. So obviously you don't need the stitch marker if you don't want to. You can just count in the stitches and attach the yarn straight away, and you're just going to attach the yarn with a slip stitch. Now we're going to start with row 1. So for all sizes, you're going to chain 2, And then you're going to half double crochet into the next 3 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. And so that's a total of 4 stitches. Now for row 2, we're going to chain 2 and turn the work. Now this time we're going to start increasing, so we'd normally go into the next stitch, but we're not going into that stitch. We're going to go into the same stitch, which is directly underneath the chain 2, with a half double crochet. Then you're going to half double crochet in each stitch along. Now it can get a little bit confusing. You need to make sure that you definitely do your last stitch into the beginning chain 2 of the previous row. So I still have one more stitch here, which is the second chain in the chain 2 of the previous row. And obviously an easy way to make sure that you've got the right amount of stitches is to stay in line with the stitch count. So I will add that as we go along. You should now have 5 stitches. For row 3, you've got a chain 2 and turn. You're going to half double crochet into the next stitch, and then in each stitch along, and when you get to the last stitch, which will be the second chain from the chain 2 of the previous row, you're going to do 2 half double crochets into that stitch, and then that means that we've increased by 1 more, so we now have 6 stitches on the row. Now you're going to keep repeating rows 2 and 3 until you have a total of however many stitches it says you should have in the row. So I'm just going to type it all out so that it's much easier for you to understand. So once you've completed that little section, this is what your work should be looking like. So for the next row, you're going to chain 2 and turn. Now all you're going to do is half double crochet in each stitch along, so make sure that you keep the stitch count the same, and then you just need to repeat this row until you have a total of however many rows it says on the screen now. So for the next few rows you just chain 2, turn, half double crochet in each stitch across until you have however many rows it says on the screen. So here is what my work looks like, and I've got a total of 17 rows for my straps so far because I'm doing the size small. And now we're going to start decreasing the straps. So for the next row, you're going to chain 2 and turn. You're going to half double crochet in each stitch across until you have 2 stitches left. So I've got my 2 stitches left here, so I've got the beginning chain 2 of the previous row and then 1 stitch before that. I'm now going to half double crochet 2 together, so I yarn over and insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then I'm going to yarn over again and insert my hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, so I've got 5 loops on my hook, then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops on the hook. That is 1 half double crochet 2 together stitch, and we've now decreased the stitch count by 1. Now you're going to chain 2 and turn, and into the next stitch we're going to do another half double crochet 2 together. So you yarn over and insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch after that, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 5 loops on the hook. And once you've done that, you're just going to half double crochet in each stitch across to the end, and again you should have decreased by 1 stitch. I will leave a stitch count on the screen of how many stitches you should have at the end of this row depending on your size. Now these 2 decrease rows that we just did, you're going to repeat those until you have a total of 4 stitches left in the row. That's for all sizes, so obviously depending on what size you're doing, you're going to have more rows to do than other sizes, but I will leave all the instructions on the screen just so that it's clear, and then this is what the strap should look like once you've done. Now we're going to be working into the edges of the rows, so back down this edge here, and this is just going to make the frilly sort of edging on the sleeves. So I've chained 2, and now I'm going to do a double crochet in the same stitch as the chain 2, so directly underneath it. And then obviously using your best judgment, go into the next stitch, which would be the next row really, so like the edge of the next row, and you're going to do 2 double crochets in there. Then into the next row, or the next stitch, you're going to do 2 more double crochets. And on this section, if you do kind of get confused as to where your next stitch should be, it's better to overdo it than underdo it. So it's better to have too many stitches in this section rather than not enough. So if you're not sure, just add in another couple of stitches, if that makes sense. So you're going to do 2 double crochets in every stitch that you go into, all the way along the edge of the strap. And you can see here it's just going to start to kind of frill up like the bottom of the top that we've already done. Work your way all the way down the top until you get to where my left thumb is. So this is what mine looks like, and now we just need to join the edge of that strap to the actual top. I'm going to pause it and zoom in. So this is where you need to join with a slip stitch. So you just insert the hook right into that stitch and slip stitch, and there you can see the top has been joined. Now I'm going to pause it and zoom in again, because you need to do 2 slip stitches, one here and one here. So it's basically like the next 2 stitches along, away from the strap. So 1 slip stitch in each stitch, and then that's what that looks like. And now we're ready to go back along the frilly edge of the strap. So you need to turn your work. Again, I'm going to pause it and zoom in so you can see exactly where to go. So it's basically the next stitch along. So the last stitch you did when you did the frilly edge the first time, you're just going into there with a double crochet, and then you're just going to do 1 double crochet in each stitch along. So just work your way in each stitch, 1 double crochet in each one, all the way until the end of the strap. And then this is how clean it should look on the front of the top. So here is one strap all done. Now when the strap is done, the edge of it where you are now is going to look like this, kind of at a weird angle. But when you attach it to the back of the top, you will attach it like this, so that edge is flat, and that just makes the frills stand out even more. So if you think it just looks a bit weird right now, don't be concerned. So to attach the strap, you just need to lay out your work the way it would look when it's on you. So I'm just showing you here, like with the opening in the middle, and then I've just brought the strap forwards so that I can see whereabouts on the back to attach it. Now you can count out the stitches and stuff if you want, but I'm literally just using my eye to kind of determine where the strap should join on the back. And you can see I've literally just gone straight through to the most obvious point. And you can mark that stitch on the back with a stitch marker. I'm just doing mine with a little hair clip, and that is where I'm going to attach my straps. Then I'm just going to turn my work around so that I can see that stitch clearly. And then you can join with slip stitches if you want to, but I actually did it and I didn't like the way it looked, so I changed it and did it with a sewing needle instead. You also want to make sure that your strap isn't twisted, because mine was completely twisted, which I will show you in a second. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the difference of what it looks like when you join with slip stitches or single crochets in comparison to sewing it. So I've nearly finished working my way along the strap. I then cut the yarn and tied it into place. And then, to be fair, it is hard to see the bulkiness of where I've attached the sleeve, but you can see my strap is completely and utterly twisted, so I had to undo it anyway. So the second time I obviously undid the work I just did, and then when I finished the strap, I've just tied it off there with quite a long tail that I can then sew it with. And the process is the exact same. You set up the top as it would look when you're wearing it and try and keep it completely even, and then I just pulled the strap forwards, and then I kind of just, again, used my eye to locate where I think the strap would be sort of the most obvious place it would go on the back, if that makes sense. And I've gone into the edge so that I can then work my way across. And you can kind of see where I went in before, so that was easier to use as a guide. And then you just grab your yarn needle and thread the yarn through. I've turned the work around, and then I'm literally just going to go into the exact spot where the stitch marker was. And then work that edge across the back of the top and just close up that gap. And you can use whichever method you prefer, like there's different sewing techniques. I just tried to use the one that I thought would be the least visible. I don't know what it's called, but I went back and forth like in an S shape, which you can see me doing now. And you really don't have to be too precise with it, at least in my opinion anyway. Like normally I say take your time when you're seaming, but this is such a small area, and like especially if you do it with the wrong side facing out, then you won't even see it when you're wearing it anyway. So yeah, just keep going until you've closed up that gap, and then you can just pull the yarn tight and weave in the end. So I'm just getting to the end of mine now, and I do want to show you just in case you're not sure what you're doing. And here I'm just fastening the tie into place. I'm not pulling it too tight because just there I pulled it too tight and it kind of messed up the work that I just did. But I managed to sort of correct it. And then you just do another knot so that it doesn't move anywhere. And then just weave in the end. Cut the yarn, and then this is what the strap will look like, and in my opinion that just looks so much nicer, so much cleaner and so much tidier. So now we're going to work on the other strap. The instructions are the exact same, so you're going to start at that inner corner and you're going to count in the same amount of stitches. So I'll leave on the screen how many yours is in case you've forgotten. Attach your yarn. You can use a stitch marker if you want, but you can just attach your yarn straight to that point with a slip stitch. And then you're just going to do the instructions the exact same. So if you go back to the first lot of strap instructions and just make sure you're working in the opposite direction. So row 1 should be going like towards your armpit rather than towards where the tie is going to be on the top. And yeah, then the instructions are the exact same. Now this next bit is optional, but it does make the top look a lot more finished. So I'm going to attach my yarn here in this corner, and I'm going to single crochet along the top edge. I'm going to go across the strap on the inner edge, along the back edge of the top, then along the inner edge of the other strap and along the top edge to the other corner. So you just need to grab your yarn. Obviously you got to make a slip knot, attach your yarn to this corner with a slip stitch. We're going to chain 1 and then do single crochets all the way around, and when you get to the upper right corner you're going to just fasten off and weave in the ends. And I am just going to show you a note as well what to do when you get to the corners. So I'm just here at my first corner, and what you do is you kind of skip the corner stitch. So the last stitch I did is here, the next stitch I'm going to do is here, and I'm going to skip out this sort of inner corner section, and you want to do that for every corner that you come across. Once you've done that, it's time to thread the tie through the holes at the front of the top. Now, I don't know why I'm showing this with only one strap attached, but there you go. So you can do this completely how you want to. I'm just going to show you how I did mine, but you can get creative with it. You can have the tie at the top, you can have the tie at the bottom, you can tie it halfway if you want to. I actually really enjoyed the way it looked when I only did the tie sort of 3/4 of the way down. And don't be alarmed if it doesn't feel long enough, like it will stretch, and you are supposed to pull this top tight, almost like a corset style, because that's the way that it's supposed to fit. Like I said in the beginning of the pattern, there is negative ease in this pattern, and I'm about to show you how effective that is right now. So here you can see it's actually like, it looks like it's too small, but then I'm going to thread the tie through the top and you'll just see how it comes together. So I'm threading it through and then I'm just going to pull really nice and tight, and you can just see how it comes together. And you could also even try wearing this back to front, because the corset style at the back might look really nice. I haven't tried it myself, but it's worth a try. And then yeah, you could tie it there and leave it like that if you want to, or if you want more coverage, then you can tie it more like this. And I went about 2/3 of the way down, and I absolutely loved it. And that is it. Well done, guys. I really hope that you liked this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Also, don't forget to tag me on social media. I absolutely love seeing your designs, or like your different takes on it, your different colorways and all that sort of stuff. And I'd love to feature you on my socials as well. So please do tag me. It's just at JeggoCrochet on everything. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching the video, and enjoy the rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this.